7 o'clock, let's call this meeting to order. Everybody rise for pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Colosimo.
Present.
Pope.
Here.
Milczewski. Here. Todd.
Here.
Vaughn.
Here.
Feldhauser.
Here.
Spears.
Here.
Teeling.
Here.
We have quorum.
Do we have any amendments to tonight's agenda? No amendments, no presentations this evening. The public hearing, the requester asked that we continue this until April 23rd, so that the public hearing will stay open until the 23rd. Do we have any citizen comments on agenda items this evening? There are no citizen comments. We'll go on to consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Munns.
Aye.
Milczewski.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Feldhauser.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Colosimo.
Aye.
Spears.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We have no minutes for approval. Bill payments this month were $706,232.38. Moving on to the mayor's report, we do have the build incentive program second extension request. So I'll entertain a motion to approve an ordinance extending the new residential construction incentive program by amending ordinance number 2012-21 build program and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute. So move.
Second.
Comments or questions? We talked about this last meeting. Roll call, please.
Milczewski.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Feldhauser.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Colosimo.
Aye.
Spears.
Aye.
Munns.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, second on the mayor's report is I'll entertain a motion to approve a letter opposing cuts to local government distributed fund revenues and authorize staff to send to state elected officials.
Second.
Comments or questions on this? I know that one had heard, but the governor has announced that they would like to cap LGDF funds going to municipalities. They're looking to cap it where it is, so any growth in the distributive fund would go to the state instead of us, so we would see no growth from that fund. But then that's costing us anywhere from $90,000 to $200,000 in new revenues each year. So we're just sending a letter out to our elected officials, telling them we're not crazy about that yet. Yes.
Well, I think that's good that we'll send this letter. I'm in favor of that. But a couple of years ago, we went to Springfield during, I want to say it was around this time of the year, and we had meetings with, it was like a whole day for whatever elected officials or city or staff that wanted to go down there. Do you know when that is, or if that's coming up, or if we missed it
It's
already?
coming up next, in May, I think, right?
It is, and unfortunately, it's May 14th and 15th, so it's wrapped over a city council meeting. So we could either move the meeting if we all wanted to go, or not go.
Because I just thought that was effective, because we were able to actually sit down with our elected officials there and talk to them directly, as, almost like, it was good things.
No, drive down is a good thing. I mean, you go down there and force all the municipalities go down there, it's a good thing. I'm not able to attend this year, but if anyone wants to go down, we want to talk about moving the meeting. If several people want to go, that's fine.
Okay.
I know every year this comes up too at the legislative breakfast, and last 2 years in a row, we talked about this. None of our local reps are in favor of capping or taking back any of the LGDF, so.
Okay. So I don't know if anybody wants to go, let me know, because I'd like to go.
I'd like to go.
Okay.
We could carpool, Diane. Think of the conversation.
Black and blue, but that's okay.
Well, I don't know, so email everyone, let's see who wants to go, who's interested, and if people are interested, we'll just go do the meeting on a different day.
Sure.
Yeah, so Barbara send out an email tomorrow, polling everybody to see who wants to go. Any other questions on the letter that's gonna go out? We need to vote on it, first?
It would be a good thing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to Public Works, you want to take that, Diane?
Oh, yeah. Fox Hill and Sunflower Estates SSA for mowing and maintenance bid award. A motion to accept the bid proposal for the mowing and maintenance of Fox Hill and Sunflower Estates subdivision for the fiscal year 2013-2014 from Marywood Landscaping Incorporated.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on the mowing? Well, it seems like everything came back lower than expected again this year.
Again this year?
Eric said in the staff meeting today that he checked on references for the company, or he checked what school districts.
There was a school district, fire district, and municipality.
And they'll give positive recommendations.
Well, hopefully they'll work out well.
Okay, there are no questions, roll call please.
Teeling,
Aye.
Bunkhauser,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Walsall,
Aye.
Spears,
Aye.
Mullins,
Aye.
Milczewski,
Aye.
Vogt,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay, for the, I guess there's no motion for the infrastructure costs. That was discussed at Public Works last week. Bart, you or Eric want to just give a quick overview of it?
Yeah, so we're seeking direction from the city council on the staff recommendation for the 5-year Road to Better Roads program that's in the packet. The specific plan recommendation, it's in landscape mode. It's a spreadsheet, and it's got, the street name, where it's to and from, the cost, the proposed year in our first proposal. So this would be our second proposal. And in general, the memo that's in the packet from Eric and myself, we figured out that all of the roads that we had planned to do this year had utilities below them, and all the roads that we had planned to do next year, or almost all of them, did not. So our simple solution to figuring out our future funding issues was to just flip those 2 years. We kicked a couple out from the recommendation for a variety of reasons that are narrated in Eric's memo. And then this would give us basically a year to complete our $1 million worth of road improvements this summer and fall. And then we've got a year to figure out the funding mechanism for all the sewer, water, storm sewer, sidewalk projects for next year. So, and the budget is, the budget adjustment sheet, which is a couple agenda items down, does incorporate the staff recommendation, which is Eric's 5-year plan there. And so you can kind of see what a 5-year Road to Better Roads program with water and sewer included in it does to our budget. It isn't pretty, but we do have a year basically to fix it.
So the schedule that's included in here, this is the updated version. So under 2013 is what you're proposing for 2013.
Correct.
And so forth.
And that would be Bristol Avenue, Leisure Street, McHugh Road, Walnut Street, and Somonauk Street. So, we would ask you to give us direction to proceed with this current 5-year proposal. We'd only start really on the 2013 schedule immediately. And that would actually result in at the April Public Works meeting, an EEI engineering agreement for the design of the Bristol Avenue water main project. So that would kind of be the first official city council vote to either continue on that path if you endorse it tonight, or to reject it and we'll go in a different direction. So we're really just looking for endorsement of this 5-year schedule as it's included in the packet.
Comments, questions, concerns? Everyone's okay with the new schedule? Yes, sir.
This schedule, remember, also is a guideline, it's not
Yeah.
set in stone. Because this year, the first year, we did add some because of what happened over the winter. So it is a very good guide, but it's not set in.
So each individual road project, would we need an engineering agreement for each section, Brad? Or would this be general roads to better road? Okay. So we would come back with an EEI engineering agreement that would outline the scope of services each year, and you'd have to approve that by vote. So nothing would obligate you to approve it if you decide to change your mind at a future date.
Well, I think the idea makes sense personally. I mean, Get the first couple streets that have no sewer issues, so we can get started on fixing those roads, and then budget long-term for the ones that have the sewer things. Rather than putting everything off, nobody gets their street repaired, and the whole program gets shifted, and the costs go up. It's just going to take more time. I would support it.
We talked to Public Works too about doing a good job of notifying residents when their streets can be tore up, or when you're doing work, letters to all the residents on the streets.
Yeah, we started to draft an FAQ that we would send out in the water bill to everybody, really. And then we'd also draft Dear Resident letters when we got to affected areas. And then we even talked about doing either neighborhood or ward meetings closer to the start of the project, just so everybody can see what we're proposing as far as a road profile, if there are other utilities that we need easements for, or if we have to rip up somebody's sidewalk. So it's kind of it's still in its draft plan as far as exactly what we're doing, but the committee did express interest in doing all of that.
We'll get this schedule and all the costs involved somewhere prominent on the webpage, so people can go to the webpage and see when their street is going to be hit or not hit, and how much we're outlaying this whole program.
Regarding what you were just talking about, we have an idea how we're going to handle parking when we start tearing up the street? Because I think people ask me about, it could take what kind of period of time, a month or something, or how long would it be tore up?
Typically, everybody could park in their driveway at the end of each construction. That's basically written into all the specs and plans, is that at the end of each construction day, everybody can get back in and out of their driveway, the street is opened up a little bit.
And then anything extra to that, like, let's say they're having some kind of party or something like that?
They're on the roof.
Okay.
And like a normal street rehabilitation is going to take
These are going to be quick.
okay,
These will be relatively quick this year. It's basically a grinding pace.
a week, 2 weeks, day.
A couple days for each project. If it takes 3 or 4 days, it'd be,
It's when we get into the water sewer main projects.
it takes long.
So only Bristol Avenue actually would be impacted this year.
Yes, and that's not a super heavy traffic road.
There was a display in the conference room that showed all the sewers and the year, water mains, pre-1940 and each year. Do we have that anywhere? That's not in?
No, we did it on the big board so you could see it better. When we had it on 8.5 by 11, it looked like a bunch of switches on it.
Yeah, 'cause that was interesting. I mean, maybe we should email that out to everyone, because I was surprised how old some of our infrastructure is. Okay, anything else on the streets program?
I have a question.
Yes.
Why was Center Parkway pushed down to 2015? Is it because of the water and the sidewalk expenses?
It's partially because of the water and sidewalk expense, and Bear, will you get it here? Yes, most of the streets, you'll see North and South Town Court, Center Parkway, Apple Tree Court. We're trying to keep them grouped as well, so I grouped them in the countryside here as well. And I kind of fit it in with the money, to be honest. That water main replacement on Center Parkway is very expensive. And we've had 3 water main breaks on there this year already.
Is that one of them has dozens of services off of it?
Yes.
Okay, so that would require at least, 6 months to a year of engineering?
That's a big one, actually, because we actually have to put the water main under the street because of the parkway trees and everything else that's there.
But another thing about switching this is that the way it works out, a lot of these streets we'll be doing this year are north end of town, while IDOT's going to be working on the south end of town. So IDOT's up there, we'll be working on the south side. So it works out that way a little bit. Okay, we get your direction, right?
Thank you.
No Economic Development Committee report, no Public Safety report, Admin Committee report.
I would like to make a motion to approve an engagement letter with Bernardi Securities regarding refinancing the library general obligation bond, Series 2005B, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on this? This was discussed at admin. Yes, sir.
Was there a committee recommendation to move ahead with this?
Actually, we had, with the library, we all agreed to move it ahead, but with the Countryside TIF bond, we did have questions regarding Alderman Colissimo's suggestion to not pay, not refinance, because it really wasn't due this budget, correct? So that's why we brought it forth to council for discussion purposes.
The Countryside, before anything really gets moving as far as city council authorization go, we were looking for your direction before we started to do a majority of the work. With the library, we kind of considered that one a slam dunk, so that's why the underwriter's proposal was out the agenda for tonight.
Well, we'll handle the library, then we'll take a vote on it, then we can talk about Countryside.
I just want to say, the committee did move this forward with a positive recommendation, but as I said in the committee, not that we want to kick this down the can by any means, but that's what we're doing, but it does help the financial abilities of the city as a whole to refinance this bond. So it will incur more costs, but it is actually a benefit to do it for the short term due to the crunch that we're potentially looking at. But on the other side, as we look at the changes for getting into the other side of Countryside, that could change things.
Just a clarification here. This memo in front of me indicates there'd be a $50,000 a year savings with the library bond.
Yes.
Now, is that going to happen soon enough to offset their projected deficit for this year?
No, and even if the timing worked out, it's not going to impact their budget at all, because this is the referendum-approved construction bond. So if we refinance it, it's going to result in lower property taxes for the residents, and then, the bond, the debt service payments each year are also decreased. So we ask for less money because we have to pay less money. So the library sees no net impact, in their budget. They don't get any money as a result of it. It's just a lower bond payment. So the point was made, I think well made in the committee, was that the debt service schedule for the library bond actually increases by a couple percentage points each year. So what we're doing is we are decreasing it next year. It's going to go down, I think, $50,000. But then the following year, it's going to increase a couple percentage points off of that. But the overall savings of the new debt service schedule compared to the old one is $50,000 a year. So the residents will be paying a lower amount forward. It's just that amount creeps up each year.
Okay, roll call, please.
Scott,
Aye.
Colosimo,
Aye.
Spears,
Aye.
Munns,
Aye.
Bilshuski,
Aye.
Coe,
Aye.
Teely,
Aye.
Funkhauser,
Aye.
motion carries.
Mr. Ed,
Yes.
we expect to bring the bond ordinance to the city council for final approval, the final numbers April 23rd, and then we would close the shortly period. So this is just engaging the underwriter to get started in marketing and documentation. We're using Shanahan and Shanahan as bond counsel here at Bart's direction. We, unlike past practice, we actually went out and discussed their professional services with various bond counsel experience in this area. I'm pleased to report that I think our savings on closing fees were at least $20,000 there too. And so it was an interesting exercise, because apparently in the olden days everyone was checking and covering and issued the bonds. There was no choice. We had to go with whomever did it. And now there's actual competition in the legal market for bond counsel. And so we are now scrutinizing every deal in the hopes to save money, as we did on the next one too.
Okay, Countryside, you want to give some background on that part?
Yeah, so the committee talked about a couple different things with this, and I think they were unanimous in wanting to push it forward, was the recommendation they came to. So there's kind of two angles we can take with this. initiatives. One is the refinancing, which is proposed in the budget from a debt service schedule perspective, which is really what I'm seeking direction on. Tonight, could be next month. It's just we've proposed it as part of the budget process. So in order to align with that timeline, we would need direction here in the next month, to really proceed with the countryside refinancing. Then the second angle, which they run parallel, but they don't necessarily interact, is the conversation that we had under the budget discussion about the early payout under the incentive program. So that conversation can be decided on at a later date. There is a budget number associated with that policy decision. You can amend that and then choose to amend the incentive agreement later or not. But it doesn't really impact directly the conversation on whether or not to refinance. So we proposed the refinancing originally, if you remember, we were talking about paying the debt service payment each year if nothing came to us out of the bond proceeds, and then that pot basically would be completely at zero in about fiscal year 19. So what's happened since then, obviously, is we've got the theater in front of us. We've got the incentive agreement for the development. And that agreement basically says we're going to pay out whatever that dollar amount is that's left in the bond proceeds at a later date. Okay, so from when we looked at that, regardless of whether it's 1.2 or 1.8, whatever we decide on later, we're still going to be looking at making next year's bond payment, as a kind of temporary loan from the general fund. It's still booked out of the countryside TIF fund, but it's going to be basically running in deficit for the next couple years until the theater is built, the property is fully assessed, and then the property owner starts making property tax payments on a completed theater. That's when we get the TIF revenue. That's when we can start offsetting the bond payment, and that's when the cash flow in the countryside TIF fund improves. So the conversation has been, do we really even want to be in deficit in that fund in the next couple of years if we can just refinance, lower our payment over the next couple of years, stretch it out over the life of the TIF, or do we just take the hit now? You pay less in interest out of the countryside TIF fund for the next few years, and you pay it off sooner. So it's really a conversation of what we think we can afford from a cash flow perspective. Again, it's all going to be isolated within the countryside TIF fund, going forward. So that was the conversation that we had.
Whether it's stood or not.
Yes, sir.
Well, and I guess that's why I brought up the issue at the last meeting. I completely understand that they're two completely different issues. The refinancing has nothing to do with the early $600,000 payment. I understand that. So based on the numbers for the refinancing, I guess it's left to debate for us to discuss whether to refinance or not. But that brings me to the second question for the money. If we're talking about cash flow issues and we're talking about budgets and cutting services and things of that nature, I don't understand what incentive we have as a council when we've already entered into an agreement to pay the $1.2 million and then pay the other $600,000 through the increments. What incentive is there for this council as the stewards of our taxpayers to make an early $600,000 payment? If we're having cash flow issues, if we're having questions about our budget, if we're talking about $6,000 for leaf removal, why are we just voluntarily making a $600,000 payment? And I don't want to be, mean to the developers. I think they're doing a great job. I think they're bringing a great asset to Yorkville. But they, like us, entered into this agreement that they would get the 1.2 and the rest would be paid off by the TIF.
No, the rest of it is paid off by our share of the amusement tax.
Right.
So that, and I don't know what the numbers are, and I agree with you, we should wait and see what the numbers are. That was our discussion, is to come back with you when we have a better grasp of the numbers. So if we paid off the difference now, we would then get the amusement tax. So we would have a more realistic view prospectively of the revenues versus obligations. But I absolutely understand what you say. Before that recommendation is made, I think we need harder numbers to see what revenues that theater will bring in and what our obligations would be whether we refinance or don't refinance or pay it off or not.
Right, because whether it's the TIF or the amusement tax, or whatever, it's an alternative revenue stream. So let's just call it a generic alternative revenue stream. Our options are, we front the money, and then we sit back and wait for our alternative revenue stream, or we don't front the money, and the individuals who agreed to wait for the alternative revenue stream, wait for the alternative revenue stream. I don't see what the incentive is for the city to front the money. And if somebody has it, I mean, if there is an incentive, I would like to know what it is.
I guess, and this is purely me hypothesizing, is, if you pay the developer up front and quicker, if he's made money back on his investment, it might be easier for him to then sell off another parcel and get it developed. So, if he's better off, if he's made his money, he might be more willing to cut a deal rather than hold off for, every last penny from the next property buyer. So, if we can accelerate the rate of the outlots and then the other large companion lot in the subdivision, and something gets constructed there, the sooner it might develop. I don't know if that's his individual scenario, but that would be, I guess, one.
Well, I mean, that's a hypothesis, but at the end of the day, I mean, being the good capitalist that I am, he might also take his profits and enjoy them,
Yep.
which is his absolute right to do.
Yep.
I mean, he's investing, he's putting out the risk, he's going to obviously recognize the reward. Good for him.
Yep.
But why should we, as a council, advance this money when there's really no incentive? And now, unless he says, you guys advance the money and look at this project that I will do over here,
This is an
oh,
excellent.
sure. If you want to sweeten the pot of a new project, I'll consider advancing the money. But I need some sort of guarantee before I'm going to put out $600,000.
But this discussion is sending the developer a message, which is really good, Carl. You're saying, come on.
Well, that's why I kind of look towards
Come on
the
down with some
camera.
more projects, and we'll consider, an early payment. So I
Right.
think this is really a healthy, impressive discussion.
Yes, if there's a project on the horizon that I'd like to hear about, then I'd be more likely to consider the incentive.
But wasn't it an option to pay a lesser amount and use some of that we save to use our cash flow issues here?
That could be another point of negotiation to say, it's going to take this X number of years to make up the difference in what was promised versus what cash was available. Would you take a cut on it if we paid you up front? All of these things are things for future discussions with the developer. Point well made.
Did you right there?
Oh, I was just, when you were discussing that and the word front-funded came up, we front-funded other things too, and it was not. I mean, I don't think that would happen here, but I think we do have to be good stewards and make sure that things are right. I agree with that.
Okay. You need anything further?
I guess the entire conversation is whether we want to refinance or not. I know that it's indirectly tied into whether we amend the incentive agreement to pay them hourly, because if you're paying out a lower dollar amount, the cash flow may be less important. But the process of drafting the bond ordinances, selecting the bond underwriters, selecting the bond counsel, and that does take several weeks, a couple months. So I guess I'd like to just get a little bit clearer direction on whether you want us to,
Refinance for
yeah.
Well, it's the problem with the chicken and the egg. The problem is, if we're not going to front the money, then we have more flexibility in making our payments, so why are we going to extend the loan and pay out more interest when we have more flexibility in making our payments? If maybe they bring forward a proposal that's enticing to this council and we decide to front the money, then a finance might be necessary to lighten the load while we're negotiating those projects. So it's hard to say whether we
But there is an
negotiate.
issue.
Okay.
The issue is, these are geoback. So by refinancing, while that's being developed, okay, if you refinance it with your TIF increment, you might create a wash. To the extent in any given year, you cannot cover the TIF increment, we have to fund the money on our GO. And so that is a reason to really look at the numbers, and if the interest rate would be less, pulling it out, so that at no time are we forced to touch our general fund. Because we're gonna have to front that, their geoguessr. So that is one of the reasons we might direct the administrator to investigate interest rates. We've also been advised in talking about all of the library, trying to send them the SSAs, et cetera, and interest rates are going up. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if that's true.
I guess my recommendation then from a budget perspective would be, we're not on that agenda item yet, but would be to amend it to remove the refinancing from the budget, because it's only a 5-year budget, remember? So the more conservative budgeting principle would say, go with the more expensive one over the 5-year period, which would be not refinancing. You've got higher debt service payments. So that would be my recommendation going into the next meeting, assuming you're ready to vote on it at that meeting, would be to add another budget adjustment that would remove the refinancing. And we can still continue the conversation and decide to do it at a later date. It's just we've prepared ourselves for the most expensive scenario in regards to that fund.
What is the difference budget-wise? Over the 5-year period or per year?
It's about $183,000 per year for those first 5 years. And then at the end of the 5th year, actually, is when it flips. So the refinancing debt service actually becomes more expensive after the 5th year than not refinancing. So in year 6, we'll say the debt service payment would actually be $51,000 more expensive. And that occurs for the following 6 years in that same dollar amount. And then after that, the final 3 years is where the refinancing really hits, and that would be 2025, 2026, and 2027, of about $460,000 per year. So that's where the flip occurs.
So why don't we do that? Let's budget conservatively, put the highest number into our budget, so then the only thing we can experience is a windfall and an improvement, not a detriment. So we budget conservatively with the highest number, direct Bart to investigate the refinance options for us, and then when he comes back with those numbers, we can make that decision. And then if we refinance and we budget it at the high end, we're just going to save ourselves money on the budget. I'd rather do it that way than budget on the low end and now be short the difference if we don't refinance.
We're going to have to pay these off anyway, so
Right.
it's almost better if we can pay that higher payment. Do it that quicker.
Right.
So it's,
So let's pay the higher payment, let's look at the numbers, and then we make an educated decision when we have the numbers back.
Okay?
But that's just my opinion.
No, I agree.
Okay.
Anyone else? No, definitely not. It may be advantageous to refinance this. So, okay, a little harder, but with the higher numbers in the budget. Benefits?
Okay, our next item is benefit insurance program renewal for fiscal year 2014. I'd like to make a motion to authorize staff to cancel the contract with Lincoln Financial Group and approve a contract with Guardian for life insurance, to renew a contract with iMed for vision insurance, to renew a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield for dental insurance, to renew a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield for health insurance for current HMO and PPO plans with no change from the previous fiscal year for non-union employee contribution rates, and add a second PPO option with employee contribution rates at 4%.
Second.
Comments or questions on this?
Well, I just wanted to say I do like adding the second PPO option for the employees. So like the memo says, if somebody is, younger or single and they might not utilize it as much, they can still have good coverage but at a lower price. So I like getting the employees to have that third option, and I will be voting for it.
Anyone else?
This is also to simplify our discussions that we were having about the budget in terms of increasing the net salary, but also offsetting that with the increase. It takes away that whole complication of the raises to absorb the increases.
Yes, it just muddled everything going into union negotiations and everything.
Yeah, so this is a much more simplistic, the multiple tiers are good. is unpleasant as it is to have an increase of what we were looking at on our premiums, it is what it is, so this is the least intrusive for absorbing. It's a good plan.
Roll call, please.
Colsmo.
Aye.
Spears.
Aye.
Munns.
Aye.
Wilczewski.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, Park Board, looks like Parks Department wants to trade in a mower. So I entertain a motion to approve the trade-in of a 2003 Toro mower to Reindeer Inc. as part of the purchase of a new mower.
Second.
Yes, this is over $500. We need city council approval. Print this mower and all the folks in the packet. Comments, questions? Roll call, please.
Spears.
Aye.
Munns.
Aye.
Wilczewski.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Colsmo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the ordinance approving the Salick subdivision of Lions Pool final plan of subdivision and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute. So moved.
Second.
Looks like there's a scrivener's error the first time we did it, so we'll just have to go back and make a correction. Comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Munns.
Aye.
Wilczewski.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Colsmo.
Aye.
Spears.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we have no zoning board of appeals, no city council, city clerk's report,
No report.
no city treasurer's report, and community and liaison reports. Yes, sir.
Real quick on the school board. Last week, they had the public hearing for the charter school. Interesting conversation that was had. Very well-regulated meeting, I will say. The public comment that was entered in on that public hearing was very unfavorable to a charter in the community, having one. There was not much support for that from the residents. They cited a lot of cases against the charter, the specific entity in general. And then once they closed that, they went into the administration and the board comments. There was a lot of discussion about how their policies have been, how their ethics have been in other states and other locations where they have done the charters and how much money is really necessary for the students. There's a difference of what they are requesting for funding versus what the school board is stating they actually have as a revenue from the state for students and from our local taxes. So there's a discrepancy there in terms of what they were discussing. And with that, there's a substantial financial burden that would be absorbed by the school district if a charter was put into place here. So that was the real quick of what was discussed, but it has a potential impact of a couple $100,000 to the school district each year. And it was a pretty good discussion that they had, and that's going to be up for actual vote coming up here. But that was moved up a week so that they could have that public hearing. So there'll be another update in a couple of weeks on that as to whether or not they're going to move forward with it. But as of this point, it doesn't sound like they will.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
Definitely an interesting debate, though, and I'm sure
It was.
there's going to be more conversations about it in the future.
I don't think it's a dead topic. It is a good option to have other resources for students that need them. I think that philosophy is valid, but the mechanism that was being proposed did not seem to be the right one for this area.
Community and liaison reports. I want to read an email that I got from the resident. Hello, Mr. Mayor. My name is Justin Wright. I am a disabled American veteran. I served faithfully and honorably in the Marine Corps for 7 years. I called and left a message for you regarding my concerns with some of the businesses here in Yorkville flying a torn up and tattered flag. The flag is something that I hold very near and dear to my heart. I've seen men give their lives for that flag. I know countless men who have lost limbs and suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, me being one of them, because of the love they have for the flag. If addressing this concern is a matter of manpower, I would gladly and proudly lower the tattered flags and raise new ones. Feel free to call me. Thank you for your time. Respectfully, Justin Wright. I responded to Mr. Wright, because I share his love for the flag, obviously, and said, give me a list of the businesses. Let's see what we can do. So he gave me a list of about 13 businesses. I asked staff to start making some phone calls and see what we can do. And, not surprisingly, but every time we called a business, they're like, oh, we're on it, and they change their flag without any coercing. But I just thank Mr. Wright for bringing it to our attention. And, if anyone sees a torn flag in the city, report it. Because with a simple phone call, we get them to change it. So he was very grateful that we jumped on it so quickly. Sometimes when I drive around town, you don't always look up and see it. I know they take a beating in this wind, and nobody wants to see these tattered flags being flown. So I thought that was very, very nice of Mr. Wright to report that. Yes.
And don't forget, there's a mailbox station in front of the American Legion on Route 34 that accepts your torn American flags, and they would be properly disposed. So if you have old flags, go by the American Legion, just drop it off in that mailbox right in front. It's clearly marked, and they will properly dispose of the American flag.
And I know at our last scout meeting, they had a disposal burned the flag. It was a nice ceremony. So there are ways to get rid of them. Do we have any staff reports?
No report.
Okay, next up to propose year 2013-2014 budget. Continuing our conversation from 2 weeks ago. Several things we discussed at South Run. There's a couple of things that were outstanding. The library being one and senior garbage subsidy being the other. The library responding with a letter. I think they emailed it to everybody. I guess we can start the discussion with the library. I read the letter. I don't know if it really addressed the concerns that I was having from residents. I mean, they explained how many staff they had, but it really didn't justify it.
They gave the same numbers you gave before.
Yeah, what confused me was when they talked about the janitors. I mean, according to our payroll, they work mornings, the letter said evenings, so I don't know where the confusion is, but yes.
I also received 2 emails, and ironically enough, both people asked if there were any volunteers, rather than filling all those staff positions, if they do have volunteers or a volunteer-type program, because they were of the opinion that there are many either retired people in our community or just people that have time and could volunteer and ease the burden of the expensive staff.
Yeah, I've gotten emails that said, don't give them a penny unless they start opening on Sundays.
Well, yeah.
At least during school's in session. I don't know any thoughts. I mean, it is only $21,000, and in a normal budget year, I wouldn't even have this conversation. I'd just give them the $21,000 and be done with it. But we're facing a huge deficit ourselves.
They have a positive surplus. Right.
Yeah, they have about a 37% fund balance. So I don't know, up to us. I mean, like I said, this is only $21,000, but are you setting a precedent? Don't everyone jump in at once.
Like you just said, they have 37% fund balance. If we provide them the additional funding, they're going to go to a 50% fund balance next year. I'm not supporting providing them the additional funding. The city, as we are doing, we have to live within our means. We have to accommodate that. I know that they've made cuts. They've made changes to how they've done that. They've cut their hours. They may have to find other structuring methods to accommodate it, but they need to continue to service the community as the rest of the city is and do it within the budgeting means that they have. So I can't see the support reasons in the letters that they provided us as to why it's truly necessary. So I can't really support it.
You're a no. Yes, sir.
Well, I go back to the concessions that the library has made to the city over the last several years, and they did make cuts. It took less than their maximum levy before when we asked them to, was a consideration to the city. And I believe that you have to stick to your word. We told them that we'd have them at a certain funding level, and they're slightly below that certain funding level. And I know we have no written agreement and we have no obligation, but to me, you're as good as your word. And we told them that if they took lower levy several years ago, that we would keep it to a certain funding level. And that wasn't me, I wasn't on the council, but it was this council, and we have to stick to our obligations. And it is $21,000, which is a lot of money. I understand that. However, I think we made a commitment in the past, and they're not asking us to go above that commitment. They're just asking us to meet that commitment. So I would support the $21,000 for that reason.
And I did not cut that deal either, but I agree with you 100%. That's the only reason I would say yes to 21,000. I mean, we kind of said that we would do it in years past when they didn't lower their levy. I think you're a yes.
I am a yes.
1-1. Yes.
Well, I still go back to the fact that last year we switched money with them, and they have $325,000 sitting in a balance, in a fund balance that came out of our general fund already. And I think that can help them out until they can figure out what they're going to do with their budget. I mean, they can use that money for this, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sure.
That money is unencumbered. You're no, 2-1. Yes.
I was a part of that council that negotiated with them, and they did accept and take a lower tax levy rate for us at our request. So I think we should honor what we did in the past, even though it was not a handshake deal, and I would vote yes to giving them any.
And just to put it in perspective, I mean, that deal was kind of made with a shotgun pointed at them too. I think the city was threatening to put them at the CPI, which would have really cut their funds, which the city had the authority to do. 2-2. Yes, sir.
I'll be down for yes.
Good.
I think the library is one of our greatest assets in this community, and I think they're making a good faith effort to make it work, and if we made a commitment, we made a commitment, and I think we should live up to it.
Yes. 32. How do I know it's going to end up 4-4?
I'm going to be a yes too. I would like to see them though really try to make it a one-year type situation and not come back and ask us again next year. And if they need to find some other way in the meantime to raise that extra funding that they need, they should do that.
Anyone else? 4-2 right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, as much as I hate seeing somebody sit with a fund balance and use the money, we did make that agreement, so if it was $100,000 or $50,000, crazy number, right, saying no, but we made a commitment, I think we should do that.
All right, that's settled. 21,000 back in there for them. I too hope that they do something with their staffing levels, their janitorial services. I think they pay way too much. They have way too much staff, and I sure would like to see them open on Sundays. But,
I agree.
and before I forget, they're having a trivia night. Yeah, when am I putting together a team if anyone's interested? Yeah, trivia night, $20. I mean, last time Mr. also competed in a trivia night, we did awfully good. If anyone's interested, let me know. When am I putting a team together? Yes, ma'am.
Just a comment, go ahead, we'll stick to our agreement, but I hope that next year we see a change. I think we really need to see it. Every department, everybody stepped up, the police department, the city offices, it's time for them to step up too.
Okay. All right, that one's settled. Next is senior garbage, so I was doing a list of changes that staff had put in here. They were kind of backtracking on this and just recommending, just putting in the full supplement for this year. I mean, it's kind of late in the game to be changing it, and people are already getting hit with the road infrastructure fee, but changing it moving forward. And we have time to discuss that, but we looked at a 3-tiered system. It's very difficult to administer with the staff we have. So we just kind of thought that maybe if we're doing a true needs-based program, we base it on circuit breaker. I know we're eligible for the circuit breaker program, $5 a month instead of 50 cents a month. Anyone who's not eligible for circuit breaker, we come up with a discount, a true senior discount, whatever it is, 25%, 30%. So every senior gets some discount just for being a senior. And then people who truly have a low income are only paying $5 a month, which is about a 70 or 75% reduction of our true cost. So, like I said, for this year, we're just throwing it back in there unless this conversation goes a different way. And we'll implement something right away, so everyone has a year's heads up that it's coming next year.
I would just make one quick note from a mathematical perspective. If you're looking at the spreadsheet that lists out the budget adjustments, my narrative recommendation that it be left alone, for lack of a better word, for this year is not reflected in the budget adjustment. So we had budgeted in fiscal year 14 in the original proposal to spend about $80,000 on the senior garbage subsidy. That was the original 3-year rollback and then complete elimination. And for whatever reason, we just missed it on this budget adjustment. So for budget adjustment 8, there should be a fiscal year 14 entry for that health and sanitation line item for garbage services, senior subsidy. And the original amount should be about $83,000, and the revised amount would be about $140,000. So there would be an additional $60,000 fund balance encumbrance in fiscal year 14 that's just not shown on the spreadsheet. We would change it for the next meeting, so that way it'd be clear. But it just, the memo in the spreadsheet didn't line up.
That's conversations that we had at staff. Yes.
Well, I agree that, it's kind of late in the game to come up with a brand-new program before the new fiscal budget kicks in. So I still I still think we need to explore a 3-tier system. I think that going from, 0 to 60 in one income level is kind of unrealistic and inequitable. And I know it means a little more work and it's probably a little more frustration. But I think long run, we're going to save the city money by the individuals who don't need it, quite frankly, don't get it. The middle tier people are going to get some sort of relief, and then the people under the circuit breaker who definitely need it are definitely going to get it. I just think, like I stated at the last meeting, if you're, if the number is set at $27,000 for an individual, all of a sudden you make $28,000, and hallelujah, you can afford to pay 100%, 100% or 70% or whatever we decide to set it at. I think it's just an unrealistic step. I really would like to see that 3-tier system, and I would hope this goes back to committee and we get working on it right away. So by the time the next budget discussions come in, we have the program set, ready to go.
Yeah, whatever what we decide, I would like to get it done right away.
Yeah.
And
Everybody knows.
memorialize it in the ordinance, and next budget, there's not even discussion on it.
Right.
Yes.
Has staff looked at other communities to see what kind of programs they have for seniors?
Yeah, almost every other, in fact, I can't even think of another senior garbage discount that's based on needs-based. It's almost all just age-based. You go and you verify it, and you get a certain dollar amount. So between the percentage of communities that do and don't offer a senior garbage subsidy, I don't recall what that was last time.
Well, I said last time, our subsidy is pretty much an anomaly out there. There's no community, a lot of communities have a straight 30% discount for seniors or some sort of discount, but nobody does anything like just 50 cents a month or a needs-based system. It's just a straight senior discount. So I don't know if you want to throw any ideas out now or just send it back to Edmund and start working on something. What's your recommendation? Just,
I guess if everybody's okay with the idea of crafting something over the next year, my recommendation would be to budget for the full subsidy in fiscal year 14. If we decide to change it mid-year, we're budgeting for the most expensive scenario. And if we decide halfway through the year that we want to implement a senior garbage subsidy, be it the following week that we approve it or starting in fiscal year 15, we've at least budgeted for the most expensive scenario. And then after that, fiscal year 15 through fiscal year 18, I guess I'd recommend budgeting for $75,000, which is about half of the subsidy amount. So, and again, you can figure that out after the fact with how many people would qualify for circuit breaker, if there was another tier that we would do. All those things can be changed.
yes.
After we finalize how we're going to proceed, how are we going to inform the people? I mean, you have a list, correct, of the
Yeah, oh,
ones?
yeah.
So we can send them a letter
Yep.
to explain?
Yeah, that's very easy to do. That's, it's all codified within our utility billing system. We can run a report in 2 minutes and then send out the letters right
Okay.
after that.
That would give them advance notice as well.
And if we are using circuit breaker, there's a lot of seniors who do need it that are not on circuit breaker.
Right,
We
they're not
also
aware of it.
put a page in there that explains who to contact, to register, and everything else.
Remember, the good thing is, we have to approve the budget by the end of April. Our first fiscal year 14 utility bill doesn't actually go out until the end of June. So if you said, we know we want there to be a 1-year, delay in whatever we decide to do, but we know that we're going to do something next year, and it's going to be based on circuit breaker, we can send out the letter at the end of June that says, heads up, please budget for this, we're considering a couple different options, we want your input, those type of things. Yes.
So I'm just understanding correctly, this wouldn't affect this year's budget?
The
The one that
current
we're talking
proposal,
about.
yeah, we're saying.
So the deficit spending that or the difference between what we're having come in and what we're expending is going to be higher?
Correct.
Because it's already, quite a bit
Correct.
out of balance here.
Yeah, the original budget
Just-
proposal was to roll it back over 2 years, 3 years, and then eliminate it.
Okay, and then the $20,000 for the library, that's going to further that gap again, and, okay. I mean, we had it in the budget, the way is it just that it's too hard to get it done before this budget year? Because it was proposed for this year.
Yeah, the act of administering it is not difficult. If you were to give me direction at the April 23rd meeting to cut it out, with the first bill in fiscal year 14, that would be more than enough time for us to do that. But the direction we got from city council, it seemed like the last time they weren't ready to do that, they wanted a tiered approach, and so that's why we came back and said, you don't even have to do this in
Okay.
fiscal year 14 if you don't want to.
So what's going to put the gap in between what our revenue is and what do you have like an idea?
The total senior garbage subsidy amount each year is about $140,000. So the original proposal to roll it back over 3 years, it would have cost us, instead of 140, it would have been about 80 next year, and then about 40 the following year. So, if we're saying we're not going to do anything in fiscal year 14, that's going to be an addition of about $60,000 to the fiscal year 14 fund balance.
So we have a lot of reasons why this is not in balance, this budget is not in balance now, because of this, the senior garbage,
Yeah.
the library, the
Yeah.
debt, the TIF that we're going to pay out on, because we do have that money, but that's just from another year. Is that why it's such a huge gap?
Yeah, the general fund is proposed to be in deficit because of the closure of the municipal building impact fee fund.
Right.
And then the closure of the rec center fund. And then the aggregate budget deficit is primarily because of the countryside TIF payout, whether it's at 1.1 million or 2 million.
Okay.
That's a large amount of money that we had from bond proceeds from 2006. So money that we generated as a revenue back then, and now we're spending.
Okay, then garbage subsidy, is everyone okay with the way we're proceeding? I prefer to send it back to admin, have a good debate on it, and come up with something that's palatable to everybody. Okay, if there's nothing else on garbage subsidy, budget's open for anything. Comments, questions, concerns? Any topic? You name it.
Yeah, I'd like to ask staff, in the Sunflower subdivision, we had a water issue there, right?
Correct.
Has that been all rectified, or is there, and I know it's not in this budget, at least I didn't see it in here anywhere, I just I understand that there's no dollars maybe this year to do that, but
Right.
instead of completely wiping it off the table.
Yeah, no, we didn't fund it. There is still a stormwater drainage issue. If you don't remember, the off-site drainage from south of Route 71 goes over or under 71 into the Sunflower subdivision. It actually creates flooding issues for about 8 homes there at the south end of the subdivision. So the last time we talked about this a couple years ago, I think the committee and maybe the city council directed us to, something that needed to be done, but they didn't want to spend money on it at the time. So There's still the conversation of who should pay for it, whether it should be the residents through an SSA, or a homeowners association, which is the SSA, or it should just be funded entirely by the city. So it's not budgeted for in fiscal year 14 yet.
Anything else, Chris? Yes.
I guess this would be where I would traditionally bring up the $600,000 question. I mean, I guess what's the plan for an answer for that? I mean, what, just so I know what we're doing, I mean, what's the plan?
The agreement calls for 1.2 million, right?
About, yes. It calls for whatever's left in the proceeds from the minute they open their doors, that we disperse that amount to them. So if they open in early September somehow, that amount is going to be more than 1.2. If they get delayed and they don't open until March 2014, then it would be less than 1.2. There's about a $300,000 bond payment that's due generally in November, December.
Right, so my question really is, when are we as a council going to make the decision as far as fully funding that or not fully funding that, only paying what the agreement requires out of the proceeds of the TIF? I mean, that would close a huge gap in this deficit. So once again, unless there's an incentive for us to do it, I think that the default is we're not paying the 600 unless there's a reason to pay the 600. That would be my opinion. So when does this council codify that decision and say this is what this council is doing?
There'd be the informal decision, which is a guideline as part of the budgeting process. So I guess I'd look for that by the end of April. And then depending on your direction as part of the budget process, we would either bring a revised agreement in front of you thereafter or not, if you say don't. So the way it's currently drafted, it is currently drafted for an amended incentive agreement and a payout of $1.8 million instead of what's currently approved. So if you directed me to 1.8, it's just not acceptable, we don't want to discuss it, we would amend the dollar amount to go down, and then there would be no further action required by the city council.
Yes.
Have we had any discussion with the developer about this issue?
They had originally requested the $1.8 million amount.
And that was back when it first came to us, correct?
It was between about our incentive agreement approval and then between budget season. So it was over the course of a couple months. So when they fully realized the construction timeline that they were on, and then we plotted that out against our debt service payments, they realized they were only going to get about $1.2 million. So they said, well, we were really banking on 1.8. That's what we would like.
Have we had any recent discussions with them?
Not since the last meeting, no.
Okay.
Not since the last city council meeting, rather.
That's something I'd like to see us do. We always try to work with our developers, especially good ones, and rather than blindsiding them, let's talk about it with them and see if, maybe maybe this is acceptable.
Yeah, there's a real help with the deficit and the TIF fund. It doesn't help the general fund at all, so. Yeah, talk to him and report back next meeting.
Will do.
And the 1.8 is what was agreed upon. I don't know if it's now or later. I was looking at like my water bill. When I get my water bill in, it's a 2-month bill. I pay it the first day I get it. And I couldn't wait, 60 days almost before I have to pay it.
Just as a reminder, the upper end, the obligation for the city is $2 million total. So 1.8 was just the dollar amount that they had originally thought that they were going to get up front, and then the $200,000 gap would be repaid over the tax. That's the way the agreement is.
Question for you, Dave. Yes. Could you pay my water bill?
Send it over.
You can pay hers 30 days later.
That's right. That'd be okay.
Yeah, but I mean, delay the payment really doesn't help cash flow at all, right? I mean, somewhat, but it doesn't really help general fund. It's only impacting that TIF fund.
Yeah, it changes, it changes it, but over a 5-year period, I don't know that we've formally estimated the amount of tickets that they're going to sell, but, from Raging Waves, the 3% amusement tax ends up being about $180,000, so that could be in that ballpark.
Then,
Season.
Right.
I was out at the job site today, it was looking good. All the footings are poured, and walls should be going up first week of April. This is a huge building, giant. It's going to be amazing sitting there. Did you have something?
Moving on, and once we're done with that discussion,
Are we done with that discussion, or are you going to reach out to them? And
Yeah, so we're back. So I guess from a budgeting perspective too, like some of the other conversations we had, you always could budget for the upper end dollar amount, 1.8, and then, just let the developer know that, we're not formally saying yes on this. We still have to debate it. We may say no. So, but then again, we would be budgeting for the most expensive scenario.
moving on?
I just trying to get some clarification on this. The employee health care cost, with this latest revision, we're eliminating now the additional percentage, or 2% or 3%, that we're going to give them to offset the additional cost they're going to incur.
Yeah.
That's all off the table now?
Yeah, the original proposal was roughly a 5% gross raise for each employee, but then we were asking them to contribute a higher percentage of health insurance monthly. So we're reverting to just a 2% gross raise, and then we're not touching the employee contributions. So it works out so that there's almost no net effect on the budget. So the impact that you see for each fiscal year for adjustment number 4, which contains all this conversation, is purely related to the health insurance quotes that we got. It's our upper end potential liability. So that's the maximum cost. That's why I think we're $52,000 per year for ourselves.
Okay, but will our employees be paying additional health costs because of the increases that we just approved?
They will pay the same percentage cost, but their monthly contributions will go up about 10%, yeah. Just because the city's cost went up 10%.
So that'll cut into the 2% raise that we're giving them?
Yes. Yeah.
You have something to say, Diane? Any other questions, comments, or any other budget items? I'd bring an ordinance for approval, April 9th. There's still further discussion, we'll just kick it to April 23rd, but one of those 2 meetings, we have to vote to approve the budget. So if there's any questions between now and then, get them into Bart, and we'll discuss it at the April 9th meeting. Any additional business? Yes.
I just had one item I wanted to ask about. For the Route 47 construction work, the truck route, is that mandatory that they have to bypass? So it'll be up to them if they want to follow signs, or they can still come through town?
Correct. And actually, the way the construction staging is going to be set up, it's set up to allow even wide loads. Yeah.
We've been talking so much about roads here, I just wanted to make sure that we bring this up. At the Public Works meeting last week, the new sidewalk program is going into effect, correct? And we're going to be starting that fairly soon. I just want to make sure we're giving that enough publicity as well, because that's going to affect a lot of people, especially in the older parts of town where they've never had a sidewalk. It's a pretty dramatic change, so I just want to make sure we're communicating with them as much as we can.
Safe routes to school should be starting on Monday. So have we planned any resident letter as a result of that, or was it just going to be?
We're still trying to nail down the start date with the contractor. It should be sometime next week, but we will pass out the flyers.
Any other additional business? No executive session. Any other citizen comments? Anything that's on your mind? Mr. DeBoer? You're regular.
Yeah, I had two things well, first, one thing that just came up in the discussion in the meeting tonight is that this discussion about refinancing, you shouldn't even be thinking about it. You should just be doing it. These are, what, 50-year lows in interest rates? That's, for that very reason alone, you should just, if you go front these people $600,000, you're like saying, we don't find any other better place to put our money than the $600,000. We all know there's a lot of it. And if you can get a lower rate. I mean, to put it in perspective, IBM right now is floating a 100-year bond. They're refinancing 30-year bonds and a 100-year bond. And lower rates, and they don't even need the money. And they pay a lot of people a lot of money to know where to keep their people. So I would wholeheartedly don't even think about it. Just go do it. Even if you don't need the money, stick it in the bank for crying out loud. At least you got it. You go to refinance this thing 4 or 5 years from now. And one thing when you talk about the bond market, well, the stock market and bond market, is the interest rates will turn. It's not an if, it's a when. And it might be next week, it might be next month, it might be next year, heck, it might be 10 years. But it will turn. And usually, when the bond market turns, as we saw in like 90 and 91, when it turns, it's usually spectacular. It's like a closer in a baseball game. You throw 4 pitches and he's down by 8 runs. And everybody looks at each other and says, what happened? Well, it's too late now. So, if you're thinking about the refinancing, just plow forward as fast as you can. Just plow forward. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I'm getting a little older here and I'm forgetful and stuff, but we're talking about the budget and all these numbers and stuff. Is the city on the hook for any money on this push for the path thing? I don't know where, did they turn over all the money, or do you have all the money in the bike path's going to go? I don't know where that is.
They're actually turning it over as needed. They have funding for like the first 5 or 6 years, and they're keeping it separate, and as bills come in, they reimburse the city for the bills.
Oh, so the city's not on the hook for anything on this?
Well, they raised about 100,000 out of about 350,000. So if they don't raise the other 250,000, then the city would be on the hook for it.
How long do they have to do that?
About 7 or 8 years.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And there's actually a chance, depending on a supplemental grant application, that 350 would be turned into about 200 total, our local share. So we haven't applied for that grant yet, because it hasn't been open yet.
Okay. That's all.
Now I'm pretty confident that they'll come up with all of it.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Hearing none, say meeting adjourned.
Yeah.